Welcome to Resonance, the podcast where innovation meets social impact. I'm your host, Gary Bosgoed, Indigenous business leader and engineer with over 4 decades of experience in project management and community engagement. In our groundbreaking first episode, we're asking, can Indigenous wisdom revolutionize modern engineering? Today we're sitting down with Steven Vaivada, founder of Scout Engineering. Steven's not just building infrastructure. He's redefining how engineering serves Indigenous communities. Get ready to explore the game-changing concept of collaborative wisdom, why diversity isn't just good ethics, it's smart business, how reframing success can transform entire communities, and the resilience it takes to innovate in a centuries-old industry. Whether you're an engineer, entrepreneur, or simply curious about the future of sustainable development, this episode will challenge your assumptions and inspire new possibilities. So join us as we connect traditional knowledge and cutting-edge technology right here on Resonance. Steven, welcome to our first podcast. This is exciting. I'm glad you're our first guest. We wanted that from the start, so I'm glad you're here.
Oh, I'm excited too.
You have lots of good stories to tell, and we're going to get through them today, but I would really like to hear about Scout Engineering.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Gary, and I'm happy to be here. So Scout is a company I developed just from an idea of what would an Indigenous engineering company look like. And of course, you can't engineer Indigenous people. But you know, in terms of an approach, a methodology, a way of approaching the problems, you know, what would we do differently? And so I have been working on that idea for, you know, the entire 5 years of the company's existence. May 1st will be the 5-year anniversary of starting up the company.
Already?
It is, yeah.
Congratulations. Wow.
I got a long way to catch up to you and your corporate history.
Take your time. That's my advice. Take your time.
Yeah. So Scout is, I think, kind of an ongoing experiment. And I don't mind sharing with you and people who are, you know, joining us to hear a bit about Indigenous business and that type of thing where, you know, like a lot of Indigenous entrepreneurs, like a lot of Indigenous business people, is an extremely strong community focus to the company where, you know, our guiding principle is how are we really helping to improve the conditions of the people living in Indigenous communities? How are we helping to improve the sovereignty and the self-sufficiency of these communities? And, you know, within all that, we're not necessarily focused on engineering, because engineering is just one discipline or one skill set of what's required to work on those major issues. And so, you know, we are an engineering company. We do build roads, sewer, water, infrastructure. You know, we're getting into increasingly more complex projects. You know, we're helping out with major projects and how they're including Indigenous communities. But, you know, I would like to share with your audience that really Scout is this experiment in how can business and Indigenous worldviews come together to develop new bodies of knowledge and new approaches to projects and solving the biggest problems that we're facing today.
Well, and you again, you walk into a market with a lot of participants, so it's really a David and Goliath story. I mean, there you are, Steve. You're in a serious headwind, facing these mountainous companies. How did you get through that?
Yeah. I mean, lasting 5 years, we have had to win a few of those battles. I wish I could say we've always had that figured out in terms of what's our unique value proposition and what is our offering that allows us to win those battles. But that's come through a lot of struggle and a lot of discovery. And, you know, looking back now, if I knew what I know now, back when I started, I might have been a little bit more hesitant to take on those battles. I think ignorance can sometimes be confused with bravery. in some cases. So, for myself, the crowded field of engineering and the delivery of engineering services and consulting, honestly, it didn't really figure into my initial idea or kind of questions I was asking about the company. It's really kind of come along in the last 3 years when we did struggle, when we did have to really dial in what's our unique value proposition, how are we marketing ourselves, what's our, why weren't we winning work initially? Because, we did have quite the dry spell. I've talked about it in other formats in LinkedIn and other places, but I won't get into it here because, it's been said many times. I think like our personal David and Goliath story is about how I've seen large companies fail in the way that they deliver services to Indigenous communities, not through any fault of the people, but I think maybe a misunderstanding of the systems that these services are being delivered in. And so trying to address that, number one, but then also to really hone in on what's going to allow us to outperform these larger firms when it comes to the integration of those local Indigenous communities, when it comes to our understanding of the federal systems that impact Indigenous communities, and how our engineering designs end up being used by those communities, and we'll call them the end users. So we're able to, I think, outperform in that way, and that's really been our way of kind of being the winner in that David Goliath story.
So you're a professional engineer, you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur. So how do you come into these discussions with these clients and be Indigenous? Is it business as usual for you? Is that a conscious thought going into these projects, or is it just who you are?
Yeah, I think I'll take it back to a bit of my family history. So when it comes to going into these talks, a lot of it was informed initially anyways, because I don't have a lot of, when I started the company, I didn't have a ton of experience of getting in front of chief and councils, public works directors. And so I really didn't have a lot of personal experience, but my dad was a very strong guidance in terms of how he approached his work as an engineer when he was with Indigenous services. And so I just watched him growing up and how he would do his work and go about his kind of day-to-day way of thinking about work. And so his strong history and his successes working with Indigenous communities as an engineer at Indigenous services. At the time, it was Aboriginal Affairs or Indian and Northern Affairs. It's gone through so many name changes, but he'd been there for 25 years and he was well respected. And so I got to watch that initially. And I think that helped me as a baseline for going into it and being comfortable knowing that there was a formula to follow for that type of engagement. But then when it comes to what am I bringing with my perspective on that, Blackfoot, I will use Indigenous, but I'll switch back to my specific identity as being from the Blackfoot Confederacy, being a member of the Blood Tribe. I'm showing up with a lot of passion to solve the problems. So I think the way that I stand out, maybe if you want to call it from that Indigenous perspective, is I'm willing to put in as much effort and put as much sweat equity in as it takes to solve these problems. Because, I'm looking at it like the communities that we work with and the people that are impacted by our work are family, right? Like when we work in these Indigenous communities, it's not good enough to just show up and solve the problem and walk away because our family members are there. We always look at
You can't leave that community. You're in it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will also be, if I fall short, I'll be haunted by that. Like they call it the moccasin telegram. It's, you can have a good reputation or a bad one, but you'll never be able to shake it. So you get one choice. What kind of reputation do you have?
Well, bad news travels fast.
Exactly. So I think definitely the passion, the investment personally. And then I think when it comes to like a really unique thing I'll share with you that I haven't shared is this idea of collaborative wisdom. So that's a term we use in the company, collaborative wisdom. It's a way of saying we're going to develop a better way, or we're going to develop a new wisdom of how we're going to solve these problems or approach the problem or look at the problem by bringing in the Indigenous communities, which have traditionally not been included in a lot of these processes or respected in terms of their Indigenous histories, wisdom, and knowledge. We're going to bring that in, and we're going to merge that with the engineering, the business, and create new bodies of knowledge or new approaches, like I say. And so that's, I think, a unique Indigenous approach that I think is a huge part of what I bring and what the company has started to bring into these fields.
There you have it. A glimpse into the future of engineering, shaped by the wisdom of the past. Steven Vaivada and Scout Engineering have shown us how collaborative wisdom can revolutionize an entire industry. By bridging Indigenous knowledge with modern practices, they're not just building infrastructure, they're constructing a new paradigm of success, one where community impact outweighs profit margins. As we close this first episode of Resonance, I invite you to reflect. How can you incorporate these principles into your own work and life? Whether you're an engineer, an entrepreneur, or simply someone who cares about sustainable development, there's a lesson here for all of us. In our next episode, we'll continue to amplify the voices of those who are redefining innovation in their fields. Until then, I encourage you to seek out and support Indigenous-led businesses in your area. Their perspectives might just hold the key to solving challenges we've long struggled with. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. For a deeper dive, check out our show notes. You'll find key moments from the episode, suggestions for further engagement, and links to connect with Steven and Scout Engineering. Remember, true innovation doesn't just echo, it resonates, transforming everything it touches. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep seeking wisdom in unexpected places.